Welcome to True Crime Threads. A boyfriend disappears and the FBI is stumped. It started as a typical Friday evening for 24-year-old Mila. The soft glow of her apartment's dim lighting set the perfect mood for a quiet night in. After a busy week of work and running errands, she was looking forward to spending time with her boyfriend, Isaac. They had been dating for over a year, and though their relationship had been full of fun adventures, they were both content with the idea of a simple, cozy evening together. Isaac, always the adventurous type, was just as excited as Mila to relax. They didn't have elaborate plans. Dinner from their favorite local restaurant and a movie they had both been wanting to watch was all they needed. Isaac arrived just before sunset, bringing with him his usual energy. Mila smiled as he entered, hugging her before making his way to the kitchen to help set up. Their comfort with each other had grown over time, and the small, mundane moments like this one made her appreciate their connection. They ate, laughed, and settled in on the couch with bowls of popcorn. The movie began, but Mila soon found herself distracted by Isaac's smile, the way he joked, and the way his presence always seemed to fill up every room. She felt grateful for him, the steady rhythm of their lives, and the balance they had found together. But when Mila woke up the next morning, everything was different. The apartment, which had been filled with warmth and conversation the night before, felt oddly empty. The soft rays of the morning sun streamed in through the curtains, casting a peaceful glow across the living room. Yet, something was missing. Isaac wasn't there. At first, Mila thought it was just too early, that maybe he had gotten up to grab something or take a walk. She rubbed her eyes and reached for her phone to check the time. It was nearly 9 a.m. She was startled. Isaac was always the early riser. If he was awake, he would have left her a note or texted. But there were no messages from him. She sat up in bed, feeling uneasy. Isaac's phone was still on the counter in the kitchen, untouched. His keys, wallet, and jacket were also there. The door was locked, and there was no sign of anyone entering or leaving the apartment. Mila checked the bathroom empty. The bedroom empty. She walked through the rest of the apartment, calling his name, but Isaac wasn't there. His absence was unsettling. She tried not to jump to conclusions, but couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Her heart raced as she thought back to the night before. Isaac had seemed perfectly normal, his usual self, nothing out of the ordinary. He had joked about how tired he was and had said he couldn't wait to sleep in. So why was he gone? Mila quickly checked the apartment for any signs of struggle, but everything appeared just as it had the night before. No overturned furniture, no broken glass, no mess. It was as if Isaac had simply vanished. His belongings were still in their place, untouched. Mila felt a creeping unease that quickly turned to panic. She grabbed her phone and dialed his number, hoping for a simple answer, a voicemail greeting, maybe, or an explanation. But when the phone rang, it went straight to voicemail. She called again, then again. Nothing. She rushed to his family and friends, but no one had seen or heard from Isaac. His parents, who lived a few hours away, were just as confused and concerned as she was. Mila couldn't understand how someone could disappear without a trace. She even reached out to some of Isaac's colleagues from work, but no one knew anything. The police were called, and while they initially thought it might be a misunderstanding, the absence of any explanation made them take the situation more seriously. They combed through his social media accounts, his emails, and even his financial records, looking for anything out of the ordinary. But there was nothing. His bank accounts hadn't been touched, and his social media pages hadn't been updated. The strangest part was that Isaac had no reason to leave. Everything seemed normal. Days passed, and despite their best efforts, the police were left with no answers. Mila clung to the hope that Isaac would somehow reappear, but as the days turned into weeks, the feeling of hopelessness began to sink in. The search for Isaac, which had started with such urgency, began to grow cold. The police were stumped. Isaac had simply vanished without a trace. As the days turned into weeks, Mila found herself alone in a spiraling sense of confusion and fear. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Isaac's disappearance than she understood. Despite the police's best efforts, every lead seemed to go cold, and every search ended in frustration. With no answers coming from the authorities, Mila felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. But she couldn't sit back and wait for the police to solve the case. She had to try something herself, anything that could shed some light on where Isaac had gone. Mila started with Isaac's phone. His phone had been left behind in the apartment the morning he vanished, an odd detail that both comforted and unsettled her. She knew he wouldn't have forgotten it, especially since he was always glued to it. She scrolled through his messages, hoping to find some clue that might explain his sudden disappearance. At first, everything seemed normal. Texts from his friends, a few work-related messages, and plans they had made for the weekend. But then she came across something strange. In the days before Isaac disappeared, there had been a series of late-night texts from an unknown number. Mila's fingers trembled as she scrolled through the messages. The conversations were brief but cryptic. The unknown sender never identified themselves, and their words didn't make much sense at first glance. "Stay quiet," one message read. Another said, "You're getting too close to the truth." Mila's heart skipped a beat. Isaac had never mentioned anything about anyone he was worried about, nor had he ever hinted at being involved in anything dangerous. What was going on? Why had Isaac been communicating with someone he didn't even know? And what truth had he been getting too close to? Mila began to feel a chill in the pit of her stomach as she realized that Isaac's disappearance might be linked to something far more sinister than she could have imagined. These texts seemed to imply that Isaac had been involved in something secretive, something he had kept hidden from her. She reached out to Isaac's friends, hoping they might have some insight into his life during the weeks before his disappearance. Everyone she spoke to described Isaac as normal, no signs of stress or unusual behavior. His friends mentioned that he had been working long hours, but there was nothing that raised suspicion. They even talked about how Isaac had been planning a weekend getaway with Mila, something they had both looked forward to for months. Mila couldn't understand it. If Isaac had been involved in something dangerous, why hadn't he confided in her? She was his girlfriend, his partner, someone he trusted. Had he been hiding something from her all this time? Or had he been pulled into something he couldn't control? Determined to get to the bottom of this, Mila decided to follow up on the unknown number that had been messaging Isaac. The phone number had no registered name, and it had no connections to anyone she recognized. She contacted her friend who worked in law enforcement, hoping to find a way to trace the burner phone. After some time, Mila's friend called back with some unsettling news. The number was linked to a series of encrypted communications and was flagged in a database for being connected to various high-profile individuals. It was part of a shadow network that appeared to be involved in some questionable activities. Mila was shocked. What kind of group was Isaac unknowingly entangled with, and why hadn't he told her about it? As she dug deeper, she felt herself falling further into a dark and complex mystery. The more she uncovered, the more questions emerged. Why had Isaac been targeted? Had he stumbled into something dangerous? Or had he been drawn into something much bigger than he could handle? The more she found out, the more she realized that Isaac's disappearance wasn't just a random event, it was part of something far darker, and someone didn't want him to know too much. Mila's mind raced as she tried to make sense of it all. Every clue seemed to lead to a new dead end, and every answer raised more questions. She couldn't shake the feeling that the key to understanding Isaac's disappearance was buried somewhere, hidden beneath layers of lies and secrets, and she was determined to find it. When local authorities hit a dead end, the FBI took over the case. The investigation had reached a point where the local police no longer had the resources to pursue the increasingly bizarre circumstances of Isaac's disappearance. At first, the FBI's involvement seemed like a hopeful step forward. They had more manpower, more technology, and the ability to track down leads that had eluded the local police. But even the FBI found themselves struggling with the case's strange nature. The first step was re-interviewing everyone close to Isaac, including Mila, his friends, and co-workers. They questioned everyone again, trying to find any overlooked detail or inconsistency that could lead them to some understanding of where Isaac had gone. They combed through Isaac's social media accounts, looking for any signs of unusual behavior. They checked his bank records, his recent purchases, and even his phone records. But Isaac's accounts were all in order. His financial transactions were typical, and there was no sudden withdrawal or odd spending pattern that might suggest he had run off or been taken against his will. His social media had been quiet for weeks, and his phone's location data showed that he hadn't traveled anywhere beyond his usual routes in the days leading up to his disappearance. What bothered the FBI the most was the burner phone. After examining the unknown number that had been in contact with Isaac, they quickly realized it wasn't just a random number. It was part of a network one that appeared to be operating in the shadows, undetected by the authorities. The phone was unregistered, with no traceable information, and had used encrypted messaging services that left no record of the conversations. But the FBI didn't give up. They were determined to track it down. The agency used digital forensics to trace the movements of the burner phone, attempting to uncover the identity of the mysterious sender. They discovered that the phone had been used in locations near Isaac's home and places he frequented in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. The movements of the phone suggested that someone had been watching Isaac, closely monitoring his every move without ever being noticed. The phone's activity was not just random, it followed Isaac's patterns, showing up wherever he went, as if someone had been tracking his every step. Despite this troubling discovery, the investigation didn't offer any direct clues as to who was behind the burner phone. The FBI couldn't trace it back to any specific person or organization. It was as if the person on the other end of the phone had gone to great lengths to cover their tracks. The FBI tried everything they could think of to uncover the sender's identity, but every lead seemed to lead nowhere. In a last-ditch effort to uncover some clue, the FBI analyzed Isaac's most recent interactions, looking for any link between him and the strange phone number. They found something unusual. Isaac had recently been in contact with a number of influential figures, people who were involved in businesses and organizations that didn't appear on the radar of the public eye. Some of these people were tied to powerful industries, while others seemed to operate in the shadows, hidden from the public view. The connections were tenuous at best, but they were enough to suggest that Isaac had unknowingly stumbled into a world far more dangerous than he had realized. Mila began to feel a growing sense of unease as she learned more about Isaac's recent interactions. She couldn't understand how he had gotten involved with these people. The FBI was tight-lipped, but it became clear that they suspected Isaac had been more involved with these figures than anyone had first imagined. There were whispers that Isaac might have uncovered something important, and that he was being watched because of it. The possibility that Isaac had been targeted because he had gotten too close to something dangerous weighed heavily on Mila's mind. Was Isaac's disappearance connected to these powerful figures? Had he been silenced because he knew too much? The FBI had no concrete answers yet, but the investigation was far from over. The more they uncovered, the more complicated the case became. Mila, meanwhile, couldn't shake the feeling that Isaac had been caught in a web far beyond his control, a web that was slowly unraveling around her. She just didn't know who to trust anymore, or if the truth would ever come to light. As the investigation continued, the FBI uncovered a shocking lead that no one had expected. The more they dug into Isaac's life, the more they began to unravel the hidden threads that connected him to a secretive and dangerous group. At first, the FBI had thought Isaac's disappearance might be a case of a simple disappearance gone wrong, or perhaps a misunderstanding. But as they began to piece together the evidence, it became clear that Isaac had unwittingly become entangled with a clandestine society, one that operated just below the surface of society, unnoticed by the average person. The group was not a traditional criminal organization, nor did it operate with the same goals as a typical gang or underground syndicate. Instead, they were a secretive society with members spanning various sectors of business, politics, and even law enforcement. They worked in the shadows, using their influence and resources to manipulate situations and people to serve their own hidden agendas. The FBI discovered that this society's activities weren't just limited to the city Isaac had lived in. Their reach extended much further, with connections in multiple countries, spanning industries and governments. What was most alarming to the FBI was the discovery that Isaac had unknowingly stumbled into their world. The encrypted messages Isaac had been receiving in the days before his disappearance began to make more sense in this new context. The unknown sender who had been in contact with him was likely a member of this society. The cryptic messages "stay quiet, you're getting too close to the truth" now seemed to indicate that Isaac had unknowingly discovered something that he wasn't supposed to know. And in a society where secrets were everything, anyone who threatened to expose them was a liability. Mila, upon learning about the group's existence, felt a cold sense of dread. How could Isaac have gotten involved in something so dangerous without her ever suspecting it? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that Isaac had always been an inquisitive person, someone who wasn't afraid to ask questions or dig into things that didn't quite add up. But she never imagined it would lead him down a path where his life would be at risk. The FBI delved deeper into Isaac's recent activities, trying to trace his movements and any interactions that might have led him to the society. They discovered that Isaac had been doing research on a series of business dealings that seemed to involve these influential figures. He had been gathering information about a company with ties to several high-profile individuals. The company, which appeared legitimate on the surface, was involved in a series of covert activities, many of which were too sensitive to be exposed. Isaac had unknowingly crossed paths with people who were linked to the society, and he had started to uncover the hidden operations they were running. This discovery raised even more questions. Was Isaac's disappearance the result of his curiosity? Had he started to dig too deep into something that could have been dangerous for him to know? The FBI theorized that Isaac had become a target because he was getting too close to uncovering secrets that could expose the society's operations. The closer he got to the truth, the more they had to ensure he was silenced. As the investigation continued, Mila was forced to confront a terrifying truth: Isaac's disappearance was no longer just a random event, but a calculated move by a powerful and dangerous group. The more the FBI uncovered, the clearer it became that Isaac had been drawn into something he had no way of understanding fully, and now he had paid the price for it. The society, which had operated in the shadows for so long, was desperate to keep their secrets hidden, and Isaac had been a pawn in their game. The FBI's efforts to track down the members of this secretive society were relentless, but they knew that the deeper they dug, the more dangerous the investigation would become. The fear that Isaac had been part of something far larger than anyone realized loomed over them, and they understood that the truth might be something no one was prepared to face. But they had no choice. They had to uncover what Isaac had discovered before it was too late, before someone else paid the same price. The FBI's investigation into Isaac's disappearance had taken a dark turn, and with each passing day the agency's grip on the case grew more tenuous. The secretive society Isaac had unknowingly stumbled upon was proving to be more elusive and dangerous than anyone had expected. Every lead the FBI chased seemed to slip through their fingers, and the more they dug into Isaac's life, the more it became clear that the truth they were searching for was buried deep within a web of deceit and manipulation. Mila, who had been holding on to hope, now felt the crushing weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. Despite the mounting pressure, the FBI refused to give up on the case. They knew Isaac had uncovered something important enough to have cost him his freedom. But what exactly had Isaac discovered? And why had he been targeted? These questions haunted the investigators, but no matter how much they uncovered, the answers remained just out of reach. As the investigation stretched into months, the trail began to grow cold. The society that Isaac had unknowingly entangled himself with was highly secretive, and the members were skilled at covering their tracks. The FBI found no hard evidence of their operations, no physical connections to any criminal activity. But the more they learned, the clearer it became that Isaac's disappearance wasn't random. It was a deliberate act meant to silence him. Then, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A member of Isaac's extended family, someone who had remained on the fringes of the investigation, reached out to the FBI with information they hadn't considered before. The family member, who had been unaware of the deeper connections Isaac had made, revealed something that sent shockwaves through the investigation. They had found a hidden folder on Isaac's computer, one that contained encrypted files and research on the secretive society. The files seemed to document Isaac's progress as he dug deeper into the company he had been investigating. There were mentions of meetings, names, and cryptic references to the society's activities. The FBI quickly moved to decrypt the files, hoping that they would contain vital information. As the decryption process unfolded, the investigators were stunned to find that Isaac had, indeed, uncovered a vast network of corruption involving high-level individuals from various industries. The documents detailed a series of illegal financial transactions, human trafficking operations, and the manipulation of government contracts, all connected to the society Isaac had been investigating. These were crimes that had been hidden for years, and Isaac had unknowingly come across evidence that could have exposed them all. The discovery sent shockwaves through the FBI. Isaac had been more involved than they had initially realized. He hadn't just stumbled upon a few shady deals, he had found the tip of a massive iceberg. The society Isaac had been investigating was far more powerful and dangerous than anyone had imagined, and the people at its core would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. With this newfound evidence, the FBI launched a more aggressive campaign to take down the society. They traced the connections between the people Isaac had been investigating and began to piece together the full extent of their operations. But as they closed in on the society's inner circle, the FBI realized just how carefully the group had covered their tracks. The higher-ups in the organization had powerful allies in both law enforcement and government, making it incredibly difficult to make any significant moves without risking exposure. The case reached a boiling point when the FBI made an unannounced raid on one of the society's known locations, hoping to uncover physical evidence that could lead to a breakthrough. The raid uncovered a treasure trove of documents and materials, all pointing to the society's vast network of influence. But despite their success, the FBI was still no closer to understanding what had happened to Isaac. Had he been killed to silence him? Had he been taken into hiding by the society to ensure he couldn't reveal their secrets? Mila, overwhelmed by the information she was receiving, struggled to make sense of it all. The Isaac she had known, the kind, loving man who had filled her life with joy, was now part of a world she couldn't comprehend. She had hoped for an easy resolution, for Isaac to come back and explain everything, but now it seemed as though the truth was more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The more the FBI uncovered, the clearer it became that Isaac had been caught in a game much bigger than he or anyone could have ever anticipated. As the investigation continued, Mila was forced to confront the harsh reality: the answers she had been searching for might never come, and Isaac might never be the same person she had once known. The deeper the FBI dug, the darker the truth became, and the more it became clear that Isaac's disappearance wasn't just the result of one man's curiosity, it was the result of a powerful, far-reaching force that no one was truly prepared to face.